Everyone, welcome to another edition of The Bullet. My name is Paul Lathrop. I'm the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. Joining me today, longtime friend and cohort, Rob Morse of Self Defense Gun Stories and the Slow Facts blog. Rob, thanks for coming along today, man.
My pleasure, Paul.
Uh, lots of news to get started with today.
Tons.
Yeah, and as usual, I don't think we're going to get to everything we got on our plate, but let's what do we got to start off with, man? As I get social media hooked up here.
There you go. First, I want to give a shout out to our colleague, Rick Ector. Well, Rick and the hundreds of volunteers that helped him. Rick has some passion in the game here. He wants women in Detroit to be familiar with guns. And when they're comfortable with that, to later get trained, go legally armed in public, protect yourself. He runs a free training day every year. Hey, you're curious? Come, you and thousands of other women will be right at home with what Rick does. The free day at the range, it grew from one range in one day to an entire weekend and two ranges. Right now, the Monday after, they're still counting noses, still picking up brass. But congratulations to Rick and to his donors and his volunteers. I know they had 2,800 people registered this year. They had 1,200 students at one of the ranges this weekend. We're still waiting for the total from the other range.
Yeah,
In any
we're
case, well done, sir. Paul, you were there with a lot of our friends. What did you see?
yeah, there were a lot of people. There were a lot of trainers from all throughout the country. Chris Cheng from the History Channel's Top Shot was there. Our buddy Dr. John Dean was there. Amanda Suffolk from Eye on the Target Radio, Rob Campbell, Eye on the Target Radio, Charlie Cook from Riding Shotgun with Charlie, and
Right.
lots and lots and lots of other trainers were there. Just naming off those that I can remember off the top of my head. Um, Antonia Okafor was there helping train, but it was it was my first year there as a trainer. I really didn't know what to expect. And I gotta say, the my heart is full after this weekend. I get a recharge of my energy after we do things like Gun Rights Policy Conference, AmCon, or I go to
Sure.
NRA show or things like that. My heart got a recharge after doing this. And let's be clear, all of us instructors laid out money to do this. We weren't paid to go. We laid out our own money for hotel. We laid out our own money for travel. It cost us money to do this. But I don't want to speak for every instructor out there, but I myself want to continue, as long as I'm financially able, I'm going to continue doing this as long as Rick does it. I sincerely hope Rick can expand this beyond Detroit and do it in Chicago, do it in Los Angeles, do it in New York, do it in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, do it in Lake Charles, Louisiana. I would love to see this go nationwide and at least every major city, if not every major and minor city throughout the country, have a women's shooting weekend where ladies get a chance to go in at absolutely no cost to the ladies at all. Free gun use, free ammo. They get a shot. They get a chance to, with a professional trainer right there beside them, to safely experience what shooting is really all about. And I know
I
I'm
think they
taking,
walk away with some swag too, don't they?
yeah. They get, you know what? They got their target. I
Didn't they also
was,
like didn't they also like get a tote bag and
I,
some, kind of convention goodies, probably
I,
from GOA?
I couldn't tell you. I know GOA was there. DC Project was there. There were a few other vendor type things that were there. At the range I was at. I was at the
Right.
recoil range. Um, but I don't know what I know at the very least they left with their target, and there were some. there were at least two ladies that I personally helped. They claimed they had never handled a gun in their life, and I am not kidding you. At 10 feet, they're
Yep.
they were shooting inside of fists. Their targets I would have been proud of after shooting for a year, let alone the first time they ever touched a firearm. We were able to get them shooting groups that were just tiny, and I was, yeah, part of that is they don't have any bad habits they need to unlearn.
Gotcha.
But it was giving them positive experiences and giving them a positive view on firearms and the Second Amendment and seeing the smiles on their faces. And it
There you
just,
go.
again, it made my heart full. I was awesome. Uh, let me get to,
I to pop your bubble.
yeah.
We do have to talk about a assault weapons ban. I know we
Can
shouldn't
we
use
real
that
quick
term.
before we do that? I want to
Yeah,
get
let's
a few comments in here.
get the comments in.
George Geller says, "Greetings to the heroes of the weekend battle of
Love
Detroit."
Detroit.
The main battle I had was with back pain. You're talking to a former trucker, spent almost 20 years in a truck where I sat for, 14, 16 hours a day in one spot. The truck moved, but I didn't. Now I go to a desk job where I sit all day in front of a desk going through, news and parsing news and going and broadcasting. And I still, I mean, I do more physical activity than I used to. I eat a whole lot healthier than I used to, but I'm no athlete. And standing for 12 hours at a range, that was an experience. Dr. Dean, who was there? Greetings from San Antonio. And Dana Lufer, who was there. It's a reunion of the ladies shoot people here. And George wants to know the question no one wants to ask: how was the line at the ladies' room? I wasn't at the ladies' room. I couldn't tell you. I don't know. Um, and and John wants to say one of the girls he taught had been shot 2 weeks ago and sought training. That is amazing.
Wow.
John, private straight to John Adine. We need to get you on the air in the very near future. I want you to tell that story. So it's a bit too long to go into a comment. That sounds like several thousand characters at the least. But we need to get you on the air very soon, and we'll have you tell that story. Yeah, let's go ahead and move on, Rob. I want you to talk. What do we got about that assault weapons ban? I know it cleared the House.
It did. It's moved to the Senate now. 5 Democrats voted against the bill. That's 5 more than I expected. That's good. 2 Republicans voted for it. They're Republican Congressman Chris Jacobs, whose district is near Buffalo, New York, and Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick, whose district is a suburb of Philadelphia. Jacobs from New York said he will not run for office again. A number of Republican congressmen said that the House leadership laid down, went away, played dead on this bill. I have some issues with Republican Congressman Thomas Massey, but he did make some cogent and pointed comments. He says, we should worry about this. If you can ban a 223 because it's too, air quotes, powerful, then you can ban pretty much all centerfire rifles. And he asked, why are these weapons of war, if you and I have them, but we call them a patrol rifle or a duty gun, when law enforcement carries the same piece of steel and plastic to protect a congressman, or if he's in City Hall, protect a local politician. Let he who is without a security detail turn in his own guns first. As predicted, anti-gun Democrats blamed honest gun owners and gun manufacturers. They deliberately ignored that knives kill more people than long guns, that hands and feet kill more people than long guns, They ignore the fact that we use a long gun in armed defense, what, 200,000 times a year? And that, like all their firearms, long guns save far more people than criminals ever use them in the commission of a crime. They called it an epidemic of violence when it's not. They ignored that violence is not widespread, but is concentrated, where we have an outbreak of despair, where we've robbed young men, often young minority men, of their future. Paul, what do you say?
I'm wondering if, and the link is at the very, very bottom of the show notes. It wasn't for story for today. I just put it in there because I thought you might like to use it in your self-defense gun stories podcast.
Ooh, that's right.
But there was a story in California where four young males, I don't want to call them young men, they weren't, four young males go to rob a convenience store in California. Convenience store owner was watching them get out of their vehicle on security camera, see them pull mask down. He knows the balloon's about to go up and grabs his shotgun and defends his store, sends one of them to the hospital as the lead one goes in, immediately catches a round from a shotgun of the store owner and runs out going, "He shot my arm off." And it doesn't matter if you're talking 20 gauge, 12 gauge, in some cases 410. There's more muzzle velocity out of a 410 than any 223 could ever provide. If they can ban 223, they can ban everything long gun.
What they just said is they would prefer if this law-abiding store owner were disarmed.
Yes, 80-year-old man.
That's insane. By the way, the only reason I'm hesitant to use it, after the event, while talking to police, he has a heart attack.
Yes,
So he's in tough shape.
he is.
I wish him all the best.
I want to put this up. That's the U.S. Capitol switchboard, 202-224-3121. It's not officially scheduled in the Senate yet, but it's never too early to get a hold of your senators and let them know that I don't care what committee they're on, they're still a member of the Senate. Let them know that you want them to fight against this whenever it gets introduced.
There you go.
They absolutely need to hear from you. Schumer, everybody up in New York, Schumer needs to hear from you. If Schumer hears from 200,000 people in his home state, he might think against putting this thing up in the Senate. He might even decide maybe this shouldn't go to a committee. If he hears from enough people that he knows he's done. Schumer's 170 years old, but he wants to govern until he's 230. He's going to be up for re-election again. So he wants to stay in power. If he knows that putting this up is going to get him shuffling off to Buffalo, he likes it in D.C. He doesn't want to go back home.
Send Chucky home.
Yes, send Chucky home. But anyway, let's get on the phone to our senators. Let them know you expect them to work against this unconstitutional bill.
When you're done that, go to the GOA website. I'm sure they've got a click-through that'll send a fax, so you can make your voice heard more than once. Paul, can we go to Houston?
Let's do that. Let's go to Houston.
What if they had a gun buyback and everybody donated a homemade gun? The Houston PED offered money for guns, but they offered $150 for a ghost gun. The spirit of the West is alive. Someone printed 62 of them and brought home $9,300. That will pay for your 3D printer. And by the way, you can make them out of the cheapest polyethylene that you can print. Look, it just has to look like a ghost gun. It doesn't even have to fire. It doesn't have to survive. Now, personally, I think a slam fire shotgun is cheaper, but my hat is off to the guy from Houston who ran his printer overnight. That is the spirit that won the West. I hope the Houston PD and some of the Houston politicians learn a lesson.
absolutely, and what'll end up happening. This guy, that is an absolutely brilliant move. What's going to end up happening is they're going to limit it to one buyback per person, because
Oh, I
I
can
could.
get a bunch of buddies for $150. I can get homeless people stacked deep.
There you go. You go turn this in. I'll give you half the money. We'll split the money. I'll give you this. We'll split the
Hell,
money when.
I'll give you 10 and a six pack.
Yeah.
What do you
Um.
half? Half? What kind of businessman are you? Anyway,
Yeah. They're. It costs outside the printer. What do you think? It's maybe $5 worth of material, maybe to do for the cheap
it,
material.
yeah, for the cheap material, yes. Now, high quality, maybe fiber infused, no, more than that. But we don't care. Make it fast, make it cheap, make it coarse. It's just
Yeah,
got to pass the cop test.
exactly. It's got to have, as long as it's got the shoulder thing that goes up, you know.
You're good. Yes, I like it. I'm thinking that homeless people are way more expensive in Sioux Falls the way you're talking. I mean, I can get you some cheap ones down here. Off to New Orleans?
Yes, yes. And this one shocked me when I read it.
Oh, you want to do it, or you
Yeah,
want me to
well,
do it?
go ahead.
It takes New Orleans police an average of 2.5 hours. Hear that again, average of 2.5 hours to respond to a 911 call. That's according to a new analysis that was requested and then paid for by the city council. The results came in just last week. That includes high priority and, now let's be fair, low priority calls. Now, it doesn't help that funding for law enforcement was cut last year to the tune of $15 million in New Orleans. Earlier this year, the police union president pointed to city politicians when he explained why more officers are leaving the payroll, even for lower paying positions with other cities. To quote him, why risk your life to make arrest this morning when the bad guy is going to be released by the DA and back on the streets this afternoon? My comment would be, how is that violence intervention specialist working out for you guys in New Orleans? What I suspect, and I haven't seen this documented, is that the cost of the city council's security detail has gone up considerably.
Mm. Well, and they need security after, the rest of the city is falling to their policies. They need security more than ever because the rest of the city is going to hell. And it's across the state, but New Orleans isn't that far from you. It's not the safest place in the state of Louisiana.
Well, it has its own problems and there are two states known for their corruption, Shreveport and New Orleans. I'm actually far closer to Houston than to New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, um, on to the Knicks.
Let's get some comments in.
There we go.
We got several comments in about the 3D printed gun story. Dana says that there was actually a $3 per gun cost. So,
Dana, you're an entrepreneur. What would you think if the next time we shop around and find out which police department is paying the most, and a bunch of us will print cheap ghost guns, and you can turn in 200-300, man. Everybody contributes a couple.
I'm wondering this. You can buy a 3D printer for a few $100s online. I don't know if they're good enough quality to do stuff like this, but again, how good a quality do you need?
Good enough to fool the cop.
Yeah, and
or more realistically, fool his boss.
Gun Websites says that took way longer than overnight. That took weeks to print unless he had multiple printers. Well, at getting $5,800, even if say
9,300.
9,300, yeah. Now, and I'm going to go to another comment of his. that was maybe $100 at most in material. So you took $100 off the what
300.
9,300. So there's
Still a,
$9,200. That'll buy a lot of cheap 3D printers.
um, and let's be clear, what we're saying, the CAD models we're using here wouldn't necessarily be the sort we'd enter in a homemade gun competition.
Right,
These are just good enough that the police will pay us money for them. The plastic version of a slam fire rifle.
right. Um, Smeggy has got a couple great comments that I want to get back to one from gun websites. Smeggy says it was about $200, but he made 3,000. He said, "I hate that it costs the taxpayer money, but if it means they stop wasting money, then it was a job well done." Absolutely. And then he says, "I hope he donates that money to a cause." I'll give it. Maybe if he buys himself a 24 pack of beer and then donates some of it, I'm good
Yeah.
with that too.
He
Uh,
earned some cash, though. He earned a pat on the back, certainly.
uh, and then a $250 basic model is all that is needed. So,
Oof.
and then, so yeah, and I'm going to ask a question, Pete, simply because I don't know. He's just being realistic. We do not want to put an unrealistic perception out there that 3D printed guns take overnight to make 60. That is just not true at all. Gun
Thanks, Pete.
websites, Pete. I want to ask, how long, start to finish, does it take from the time you press print or whatever you do, from the time you start the actual printer working to complete one lower? How long does that take? I don't know, or anybody who happens to know that answer. I don't know how long it takes to complete one lower. I'd love to know that answer. Let's go ahead and go out. Well, we're waiting for that. Let's go to the next story, Rob.
Okay. We've had 3 years straight of 1 million NICS checks a month. I don't know about you, but those are not rookie numbers. You're turning
Mm,
in some fine effort. That's right. For a 36-month streak, ended yesterday with July, it was announced by the National Shooting Sports Foundation, the Gun Manufacturers Trade Association. They crunched the figures issued by the Federal Bureau of Investigation's National Instant Criminal Background Check System. The unadjusted July numbers figure out at 2.3 million after the data is sifted by NSS to remove checks and rechecks for carry permits. It was just over 1.2 million for new gun sales. In the end, they added up, yes, 3 years straight from July 2019 through July 2022, where background checks for the sale of a firearm have exceeded 1 million each calendar month. Welcome to the armed America.
yes, that's 36 million. That's over the past 3 years. That's decent. There are what 350 million Americans, give or take.
340, something like that. Yeah.
So that's just the last 3 years. 1 in 10 of us, statistically speaking, got
Yeah.
a new gun. Now, there were already a lot of firearms in circulation, and let's be honest, not all of those are brand new firearms. The majority are, because these are new gun coming out of gun stores. So the majority, I think, of what they sell are new guns. But uh, those are solid numbers. That's
Those,
very good news.
well, what
And
we've got 400 million firearms spread about 80 million gun owners, except what? We had 5, 6, 7 million new gun owners last year. And the great news is that new gun owners just look just like everybody else. If there was before a prejudice that gun owners are old white males, what was it? Pale, stale, and male. Um, that's not true anymore.
Well, and I'll tell you this from
Eh,
my experience in Detroit this past weekend, it's not going to be that way.
yes, good. Thank you.
And then
Um,
let's go. I want to get back to comments about that. Give me the put this up. They tell me it takes 24 hours to make a Glock frame and all the support it needs. I'm told. I've not printed one myself. He followed up with that may vary on the model or techniques. I'm new to printing.
okay, gotcha.
And
Oh,
one
we have.
more. This just came
Oh,
in. Charlie Chambers says Paul must have traveling experience to be back so soon from Motown. I might have turned a wheel or two in my lifetime. Yeah.
just a few
Yeah.
miles under the tires.
Yeah. Let's talk. You know what? Let's talk about this California Rifle and Pistol Association story.
Which one are you thinking?
Well, let's see here. It's uh, California Rifle and Pistol Association files suit against the state of California, asking the
Ah,
state to stop enforcing its roster of safe handguns. The suit is
gotcha.
called Bolin versus Bonta. CRPA says the state's roster is not consistent with the recent Bruin ruling by the U.S. Supreme Court. The handgun roster is clearly an infringement, and there is no history of firearms having to be on a state approved list during the ratification of the Bill of Rights or later during the incorporation of the 14th Amendment on the states. California imposes unique safety requirements on firearms. There are currently, get this, no firearms offered for sale that meet these unusual requirements. Guns are offered for sale in California are unsafe handguns that are grandfathered in. For example, the Generation 5 Glock pistol used by law enforcement agencies all across the country is considered unsafe in California. Law enforcement officers, of course, are exempt from this roster. The plaintiffs are asking for a temporary restraining order and for a permanent injunction against the state. I certainly hope and I expect they will be successful. And I, California, it's not going to happen tomorrow, but I do see a date in the fairly near future where if you want a Salzamars, if you want any brand of firearm, guess what? You can go have your gun shop order it. If you any kind of off-brand wild firearm you want, you're going to be able to get it, including something like Barrett, because I expect that 50 caliber
Ooh,
arbitrary
listen to you.
ban is going to be going by the wayside in the not too distant future as well.
What you and I know that if this were brought to Judge Roger Benitez, we'd win in a heartbeat.
Yes.
He's the judge who said that the mag ban was ridiculous. On the other hand, we also know that there are a number of judges, if the state is shopping the venue, where they can get the ruling they want too. We also know that the Ninth Circuit is still weighted enough against firearms owners that we'd lose in the ninth. Can we now? Here's an interesting thought. Do we want to lose at the lowest federal level so that we can appeal most quickly to the U.S. Supreme Court and they grant cert, overturn, and remand in the shortest amount of time?
That's a
If
great question.
if
Ideally, what I think I'd like is for the justices of the Ninth Circuit to actually read the Heller decision, to actually read the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association decision, and apply those principles to what is in front of them. That's what I'd like.
you'd like them to quit being ideologues, so
Yes.
would I. Short of that, I mean, there are lawyers who make their living studying this strategy. Uh, and we know several of them. We get to talk to another good reason to get to GRPC this year.
Yes, yes. Let's plug. We're already past time. We're gonna run a Magnum episode anyway. Let's go ahead. Let's plug GRPC a little bit, shall we?
Please.
Gun Rights Policy Conference happens September 30, October 1, October 2. This year it's in Dallas, Texas. You need to be there because not just because people like Alan Gurr, who argued the Heller decision in front of the Supreme Court, but you get to run into people like that, people like Alan Gottlieb, people like Rob Morse, myself, everybody who is somebody in the Second Amendment community is there. Most of them are speaking, even if they're not speaking and they're just there working or attending. You get to walk up, talk to them, shake their hand, get their ideas, and they will often ask you about what's happening in your area, what's working for you. It's where a lot of good work gets done all throughout the country, is because people are meeting up and exchanging ideas and working together off of Gun Rights Policy Conference.
I'm sure that the heads of various pro-gun advocacy organizations in each state, in each region, exchange ideas. For the guys who are stuffing envelopes and making phone calls like me, I get to learn what other volunteers have been doing, what works in their state, and it's inspiring even to, at my low level.
Yeah. I want to get a couple comments in here, and then we're going to do one more story before we take off, because both Rob and I think this is a great story.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm queuing up that last one, Rob, but I want to get these comments in here quick. George Geller says, I'm a life member of California Rifle Pistol Association. Hope my membership is good for many more years. George, if you're a life member, I hope your membership is good for a lot of years. Yes, absolutely. Larry wants to know, what about 505 Gibbs, 600 Nitro Express, 700 Nitro? They've been around quite a while. Yeah, I want to be able to. I want to be able to go to Amazon and order a case of 700 Nitro. I want to be able to go anywhere and have I want to be able to go to Amazon and have them just deliver a Barrett to my front door. That's what I want. That's what I want to happen. I don't know if we'll get that far very fast, but I believe we're going to get there. So, Rob, let's go to this last story, the Jersey and California story.
Okay. Now, this requires some background. You remember that states like New Jersey and California were looking at setting up laws so ordinary people could sue gun owners and gun manufacturers when a criminal uses a gun in the commission of a crime. Now, I want you to back up and think of this. Given that the Democrat performance at the border has been poor, look at our problems with the economy and our problems at the gas pump, that says that President Biden is looking more and more like a one-term president. And unless one political party steals an election, a Republican president is likely to have a Republican-controlled Congress, if not a Congress and a Senate. Now, how about a federal law that allows people injured in shootings to sue for damages whenever a state or private entity declared that given space was a gun-free zone, and then they didn't make it gun-free, in fact? California, New York, Massachusetts, New Jersey, and many cities in those states would probably go bankrupt by next week. That law wouldn't be so different from the laws we already have in California and New Jersey that are targeting firearms manufacturers for the negligent acts of criminals. Paul, what do you think?
Didn't Tennessee, I think you and I even talked about on Polite Society podcast when it was going through, They passed a law that said if you have a gun-free zone, you must provide security. You must make sure it is really gun-free. Otherwise, the people injured there in shootings get to go after you. I remember that. I remember that
was
law going
submitted.
through.
I don't think it passed.
You don't think it? Okay.
Yeah, but it's essentially saying, at least for government agencies, they're saying, oh, you were injured. No matter how you were injured, you get to address the negligent party. Your city said that a downtown parking lot is a gun-free zone, and you were pistol whipped and beaten because you were disarmed. Yeah. Yeah. Hospital bills, negligent, pain and suffering. Sounds about right to me.
Yeah. Well, we're more than 5 minutes over, dude. Let's start wrapping this up. Before we take off, man, tell us about Self-Defense Gun Stories. Tell us about Slowfax, bud.
My blog is slowfax.wordpress.com. 2,000 articles are waiting for you there. My weekly podcast, Self-Defense Gun Stories, I look at how our neighbors did last week in defending themselves and their families. I ask a question. Was Grandma lucky, or did she use best practice? Let's see what we can learn. 286 episodes as of tomorrow when I record the next one. Paul, Polite Society?
Well, because I was traveling back from Detroit, there was no Polite Society podcast yesterday. We'll be back just like today. We're starting up with the Bullet, and we'll be doing the Bullet live and in person the rest of this week. We'll go back to doing a live Polite Society podcast this coming Monday. I do not know if I booked a guest yet. Let me look at my calendar, get the show calendar up here. On Monday, I do not have a guest booked yet. We'll have to change that. But recent guests we had last Monday. Let me go back.
The Gun Foodie?
Yeah, no, we had Tim Crosno on last Monday. We did have the Gun Foodie, which is Patrick Collins. We had him on a couple weeks ago. By the way, he was in Detroit. He's going to be on the Bullet in a couple weeks. He's got a really interesting story that he's going to be sharing with us. He had not just a few rounds, he had tens of thousands of rounds of ammunition stolen. And the ATF, we don't care. Seriously, the ATF really didn't want to hear about it. We'll be talking with him about that. Let me see when he's scheduled, because we've already booked him. It's on the 22nd. He's going to be right here. So
I want to talk to him. I want to interview him. Great point.
So anyway, that's going to wrap it up for today. Please come join us the rest of the week. Everybody, thanks for watching. We will see you next time.